The first time the world heard the name Menlong, it came like a whisper carried by the wind. Soft, uncertain, easily ignored. But whispers have a strange habit. If they carry truth, they grow louder. If they carry destiny, they become impossible to silence. Long before history noticed him, Menlong was already walking a path no one could see. On a storm-soaked night in a forgotten village tucked between mountains and mist, a child was born under an unusual sky. The elders later swore the clouds twisted into the shape of a dragon, lightning flashing like silver scales across the darkness. Thunder did not roar, it waited, as if listening. The moment the child cried, the storm stopped. That child was Menlong. No royal banners marked his birth. No prophecy was written on paper. He was born into simplicity, into a life of cracked earth, wooden doors, and hands rough from honest labor. His father was a quiet man who spoke little and watched much. His mother carried sadness in her eyes, the kind that comes from knowing life is hard but choosing hope anyway. From the beginning, Menlong was different. As a boy, he would disappear for hours, wandering into the mountains alone. Villagers said he was strange, that he spoke to the wind, that animals followed him without fear. Once, a wounded hawk fell from the sky near the village. While grown men hesitated, Menlong approached calmly, wrapped the bird in his shirt, and stayed with it through the night. By morning, the hawk flew away. From that day on, it circled the village whenever Menlong was near. But the village did not see destiny. It saw danger. When drought struck and crops failed, fear needed a target. People whispered again, this time with suspicion. They said the boy brought imbalance. That his silence hid something unnatural. Menlong heard these words, but he never defended himself. He simply watched, listened, and learned. At the age of 13, his world shattered. One evening, soldiers arrived without warning. They wore unfamiliar colors, their armor dusty from conquest. The village was accused of hiding something. What? No one knew. Houses were searched. Fires were lit. Screams filled the air. Menlong ran, but not fast enough. He watched helplessly as his father fell. He felt his mother's hand slip from his grasp in the chaos. In one single night, childhood ended. By dawn, the village was gone. Menlong walked away barefoot, blood on his hands, fire in his memory, and a question burning inside him. Why does power choose destruction over protection? That question would shape everything. Years passed like shadows stretching across stone. Menlong became a wanderer, moving through cities where gold ruled and villages where hunger spoke louder than words. He trained not in comfort, but in necessity. He learned to fight not for pride, but to survive. Every loss sharpened him. Every betrayal educated him. But strength alone was never his goal. He listened to scholars in tea houses and thieves in alleyways. He learned strategy from generals who didn't know they were teaching him, and wisdom from beggars the world refused to see. Menlong understood something most never do. True power is not loud, it is precise. One night, deep in the northern mountains, he encountered an old man sitting beside a fire that burned blue instead of orange. The air felt heavier there, charged with something ancient. You walk like someone carrying the weight of many lives, the old man said without looking up. Menlong stopped. I carry questions, he replied. The old man smiled. Then you are ready. What followed was not training, but transformation. The old man taught Menlong how to master fear before mastering others. How to see the battlefield before the first strike. How silence could be louder than war drums. Most importantly, he taught him restraint. Power without control, the old man said, creates the monsters it claims to fight. When Menlong left the mountain, the world had not changed, but he had. Years later, kingdoms began to notice patterns. Corrupt officials vanished. Criminal networks collapsed overnight without chaos. Battles were won before armies even met. Always, there were rumors of a strategist who moved unseen, a shadow that turned tides. Some called him a hero. Others called him a ghost. The powerful called him a threat. Then came the moment history could no longer ignore. Two rival forces prepared for a war that would have destroyed thousands. Cities emptied. Mothers hid their children. The sky itself seemed tense. On the night before the first attack, Menlong walked alone into the enemy camp, unarmed. By morning, the war was over. No swords clashed. No blood spilled. Leaders woke to find their secrets exposed, their alliances undone, their ambitions stripped naked by truth. Documents appeared. Testimonies surfaced. The war collapsed under its own lies. That was the day the name Menlong echoed across borders. Yet, he did not claim a throne. He did not accept praise. He disappeared again. Because Menlong was never fighting for power. He was fighting for balance. But destiny is patient, and the past never forgets. The same force that destroyed his village rose again, stronger, darker, more organized. This time, they were not hunting villages. They were hunting symbols. They wanted Menlong. The final confrontation came at dawn, in a city of stone and mirrors. Traps were set. Assassins waited. Armies surrounded him. They believed numbers would win. They were wrong. Menlong moved like a storm with purpose. Not wild, not reckless, controlled. Every action ended conflict, not escalated it. When the dust settled, the leaders behind decades of suffering stood exposed before the world. Menlong had won, but at a cost. Wounded, exhausted, and finally seen, he stood before the crowd that once would have called him strange. Silence filled the city. Someone shouted his name. Then another. Then thousands. He raised his hand. "I am not your ruler," he said. "I am not your savior. I am proof that one life, guided by purpose, can change many." And then, like he always did, Menlong vanished. Some say he returned to the mountains. Others say he walks among us still. Some believe he was never one man, but an idea. Because even today, when injustice collapses without explanation, when power is challenged without violence, when silence speaks louder than force, people still whisper the same name. Menlong. Not a legend born of myth, but a truth born of choice. And that is the untold story the world was never meant to forget. Before the world ever feared his name. Before kings whispered it behind closed doors. Before history tried to erase him. Menlong was just a child standing beneath a sky that refused to behave like any other. The night he was born, the village dogs did not bark. The insects fell silent. Even the river slowed, as if time itself had paused to witness something it did not yet understand. Clouds twisted above the rooftops, circling endlessly, while flashes of lightning revealed a shape many later argued about, but all secretly remembered. A dragon. Coiled. Watching. When Menlong took his first breath, the storm vanished. No one celebrated loudly. No drums. No songs. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. In a land where signs were taken seriously, this was not a blessing they knew how to name. As Menlong grew, the village learned to watch him carefully. He almost never cried. When other children fought, he observed. When they laughed, he smiled, but quietly, as if laughter was something sacred that shouldn't be wasted. His eyes were deep, unsettling for a child so young. It felt like he was listening to something no one else could hear. By the age of 5, strange things began to happen. Lost goats would follow him home. Birds landed on his shoulders without fear. Once, during a brutal winter, the village well froze completely, except for one small circle of water where Menlong often Saturday. No one could explain it. His mother worried in silence. She would wake at night and find him staring at the moon through the open door, barefoot on frozen ground, unshivering. "What do you see?" she once asked softly. "Paths," he answered. "Too many paths." His father, a man hardened by years of labor and disappointment, said little. But he watched his son the way soldiers watch the horizon before war, knowing something was coming, but not knowing from where. The other children avoided Menlong. They said he made them uncomfortable. That when he looked at you, it felt like he could see what you were thinking. Rumors grew the way they always do in small places. Slowly, quietly, and then all at once. They said the boy was cursed. They said he was blessed. They said he was dangerous. Menlong heard every word. And he remembered them all. At 10 years old, he wandered farther than ever before, climbing beyond the mountain paths the elders warned about. The air grew thinner, the silence heavier. At the peak, he found an ancient stone circle, cracked, forgotten, older than memory. When he stepped into its center, the wind rose violently. Images flooded his mind. Fire. Armies. Cities collapsing. Crowds screaming. 1,000 faces he did not know, yet somehow recognized. He dropped to his knees, gasping, as the vision ended. That was the first time Menlong felt fear. From that day on, he changed. He spoke less. Trained his body alone at dawn. Watched people carefully, studying their movements, their habits, their weaknesses. He learned how anger showed itself before words. How lies moved differently than truth. How power always revealed itself in small moments before large ones. Then came the drought. Crops failed. Wells dried. Hunger turned neighbors into strangers. And fear needed an explanation. Whispers returned, louder now. This started when the boy was born. He brings imbalance. Nature rejects him. Menlong tried to help. He carried water, shared food, worked until his hands bled. But fear does not listen to kindness. It listens to desperation. The night the soldiers arrived, the moon hid behind clouds like a witness afraid to look. Boots thundered through the village. Torches lit the darkness. Shouts filled the air, sharp and cruel. Doors were kicked open. People were dragged outside. Menlong's father stepped forward, calm but unarmed. The blade fell anyway. Menlong froze, not because he was weak, but because some moments fracture the soul before the body can move. His mother screamed his name. That sound, more than the fire, more than the blood, burned into him forever. He ran. Not away from danger, but toward her voice. Smoke blinded him. Heat scorched his skin. Hands grabbed at him, but he slipped free. For one brief second, he reached her. Then chaos tore them apart. By sunrise, the village was ash. Menlong stood alone among the ruins, barefoot on scorched earth, his childhood buried beneath smoke and silence. The storm returned, but this time, it did not stop. Rain fell hard, mixing with tears he did not realize he was shedding. He did not scream. He did not beg. He made a promise. A promise that power would never again go unchecked in his presence. A promise that fear would never again decide who lives and who dies. As he walked away from the ruins, thunder rolled behind him, not angry, but patient. The boy was gone. What walked into the unknown that morning was something else entirely. And this was only the beginning. Fire. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves powerful stories, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss part 2 of the untold story of Menlong. Your support keeps these stories alive.